Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to C&B's virtual training session. Today is our day 2 in a 3-part series where we talk about all aspects of the John Deere Solutions systems. My name is Nate Jansen. I'm a product specialist with C&B Operations.
With C&B Operations, I'm Jeff Buick, Vice President of Precision Ag.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Matt Hatcher. I'm with John Deere, and I'm a product and systems specialist focusing on large grain, so corn and soybean production.
You bet. In today's session, we're going to be taking a look at features outside of the cab. Now, if you joined us yesterday, we spent a lot of time focusing on the interior of the cab, the features of some of the components inside, on the armrest and so forth. Today, we're going to take a step outside, look a little bit more closely at the solution system. How do we load our sprayers, the John Deere pulsing system, direct injection, and a whole lot of other features that we want to take a little closer look at. All of these pieces together add up to be John Deere's most efficient sprayer yet.
Also, documenting and accessing our application records is very important. To assist in tracking of weather during spray events, we'll discuss John Deere's mobile weather product. This has also been proven valuable when making on-the-fly decisions related to weather conditions that could affect solution application performance.
Yeah, today we really want you to learn about these 3 main topics here. Really looking at the solution systems of the John Deere Hagie sprayers and contrasting them to some of the competitive units that we'll be showing again today. The exact apply system and the nozzle body and how to disassemble that. Nate's going to do a really good job of showing us that later and comparing and contrasting that to some of the competitive units out there in the market as well. And then the integrated technology of the machines. And really Jeff's going to focus in really nicely on that mobile weather piece. So looking forward to hearing more about that later.
Absolutely. Well, this may be the first time that you've been on a Zoom webinar with C&B Operations, so just want to give a few housekeeping items real quick. Behind me, you'll see the screen that you should be looking at on your computer or your device right now, and you'll see down here on the bottom that we have a few different controls as you look into the Zoom webinar. Now, on the very far left-hand side over here, you'll see that your audio controls. You should be muted already as you've been brought into the webinar. So you won't be able to talk with us directly, but throughout the event, if you do have questions, there is a Q&A button down here at the bottom, or a chat, and we'll be monitoring that throughout today's discussions and presentations and examples that we just talked about with all of you. So we have people monitoring the chat. We also have people at the Deere and Hagie factories that are on a chat with us as well. So if we don't know the answer to the question immediately, we can reach out to them and hopefully find the answer to any questions that you all may have here today with the Zoom webinar. So we'll periodically ask through that throughout the event. We'll also be recording this event as well, so if you want to go back and review anything, we'll be sending it out to the participants that are a part of this meeting. And for internal C&B folks, you'll have access to it as well as time moves on.
All right, now to help us gain a little better understanding of our solution systems, we took a look at 4 different sprayers. A John Deere R4030 with a 90-foot steel boom, an R4045 with a 132-foot carbon fiber boom. Then we also compared it to some other systems, both an RG1100 from AGCO and a Case 4440 Patriot sprayer. Now let's take a walk around these machines to gain a little bit better understanding of how they function and also some of the highlights of the solution systems on all these units. When you look at the side of our John Deere machines, we've got the option to put a chemical eductor on the side. This machine does have a chemical eductor. You can get it without. Really nice part about the chemical eductor, being able to load our chemicals, whether it's a liquid or a dry product, directly from the side of the machine. And the nice part about the John Deere system is we can load the eductor whether we're filling the machine or not, which a lot of our competitors in the market don't have the ability to do. The machine can bring water into the eductor to rinse. There's a jug rinse inside of the stainless steel enclosure as well. It makes for a really clean, really simple solution. When we take a closer look at the side of the machine, this system is called the Automatic Solution Command System. And there are 2 different versions of this available. There's an auto and a manual available. When the machine is ordered with this system, it is not retrofittable one way or the other. So the machine will always have either the manual or the auto solution command. Now when we look at this keypad and LCD screen, there's a few features to call out that really make operating the machine a lot more user-friendly and takes a lot fewer trips up to the cab. When we look at our eductor, for instance, we can turn our eductor on using this keypad, first by turning our pump on, our number 2 button, and then the eductor button, which is our number 6. That allows us to use the eductor, loading product from the side of the machine if the machine is equipped with one. When we compare the manual with the auto solution command has 12 buttons all in total, and allows for the ability to rinse, turn on agitation, turn on load fill lights, turn on the pump to either suck on with the machine or have it pushed on from a nurse pump, and also a feature that is industry exclusive called Target Fill. And Target Fill is a really cool feature that we can punch in how many gallons we want loaded into the machine if we're using the sprayer's pump to load, and the machine will automatically shut down when it gets to the set gallons. So for instance, if I'm finishing out a field, I've got 25 acres left, I'm spraying 10 gallons an acre, I can load on that 250 gallons or maybe a little bit more just to make sure I finish without having to guess utilizing the sight gauge. So it's a really nice feature, again called Target Fill, that is just a feature when we have the automatic solution command system.
One of the things too that the solution command system adds is a nozzle check, Nate. So as you're out there, you got the pump running, you've engaged it, you got your booms unfolded, you can actually push that lower left button, kind of looks like a little eye, and it'll actually start a nozzle check. Now when you push the button, it's going to be delayed about 10 seconds to give you time to walk around behind the machine, and starting in the far left, it's going to turn on each valve section independently for a few seconds, so you can take a look at that, make sure you don't have a plugged nozzle, all your patterns look good, and then walk up and down the boom to make sure everything looks acceptable as the operator. So nice to be able to do that right from the ground. You don't got to jump up in the cab, turn on your spray pump, turn on your system, and then get out. You can back up to a fence line, and do this right at the edge of the field if you have a suspect nozzle.
Along the same line too, Matt, if we look at the number 7 button just above the eye, if we wanted to turn the whole boom on all at the same time, so say I cleaned out my boom strainers or I was rinsing the machine, I can turn the whole machine on at once too, and it'll run at basically a minimum pressure and allow us to do that from the cab without having to hop up into the screen, punch in a simulated speed, for instance, turn on the pump, turn on the master. I can do it all from the ground by turning on my pump, hitting my number 7 or the visual check button in the lower left, and make all the checks we need without going anywhere except from by the ground. So I got all my tools and everything with me. I don't have to contaminate my cab with working on the nozzles and keeping the cab clean. If we look a little further back on the machine, depending on the model that you order, there's a couple different options available for pumps and flow. With our R4030s and R4038s, those machines have what we call our standard flow system. The R4038 can also have a high flow system added. What does that mean? Basically, a standard flow system flows at about 170 gallons per minute on the top end. So if we're looking at doing high rates of liquid nitrogen or liquid fertilizer for that matter, we can put out about 170 gallons a minute with our standard flow. The R4038, the R4045, and the R4060 can all be equipped with a high flow system, and it's often referred to as a dual flow meter system as well. Those systems increase capacity by about 50 gallons a minute. 225 gallons a minute is our max flow on our high flow systems. And what the handles back here are really looking at, depending on the rate that you're applying, we can put the machine into a low flow, standard flow, or if it's equipped, a high flow setting. So under 26 gallons per minute, which depending on what you're spraying and your boom width, typically for a 120 foot boom, that 5 gallon an acre range will typically be in a low flow mode. And what we're doing is essentially orificing that solution line so that we don't have surges and dips in our flow and in our pressure, which makes for a nice even flow pattern, keeps good pressure to the tips as well. So that is the handle on the far left. The middle handle is one to operate in a high flow mode. So again, if we're in this case operating in standard above 26 gallons per minute, we leave that orifice valve where it is. The final valve in the system there is basically a boom shutoff, just an open close valve, and allows us, if we're going to do any work on the boom, that we don't have a straight line from the solution tank through the pump out of the boom. So we can shut that off if we do need to work on anything. Like the flow meters, for instance, if we spray something like atrazine or a dry soluble chemical, we can shut that off so we're not allowing additional fluid into the system if we're working on it. When we look at the front of our machine, one of the options that we have is to add a front fill line option. The front fill option is a 3-inch fill, and it does have a couple features that we're going to call out. So first off, it's got the yellow banjo valve there. That's just an on-off valve, isolating the machine from whatever you're nursing the sprayer with. On the left side, there's a black handle, and that handle is an air purge line. Further back on this line, there's a check valve. that if we need to clean our line out to minimize contamination from switching different products, or if we just want to clean it out so we don't have products sitting in that line, not in solution, not getting sprayed out, we can purge that whole line that goes back just before the solution tank. Now when we load on the front fill, you notice there's a black switch just above that yellow handle. That switch opens and closes a valve in the sump of the spray tank. So if we're trying to load the sprayer, we first come over, we hook up, we open our yellow valve. We need to take that switch, if we're pushing on with a pump on the nurse trailer, we need to put that switch in the middle position, or that white line in the black box, the on position. That opens the valve, allows a free flow of product in when we're pushing it on. Now if we wanted to pull product on using the sprayer pump, there's a detent position on the top side of that switch. We can just push and release it. It starts the pump up on the sprayer and immediately starts sucking product on. So when we talked about the automatic solution command system, this is where we could enable target fill, or the nice part about having the auto solution command system, there's floats inside of the tank. If it knows this machine, say we're looking at an R4038, it knows when that machine hits 1,000 gallons that it is full, and it'll automatically shut the sprayer pump down without any additional operator involvement. Now if we have the manual solution command, it doesn't have that feature. You just gotta flip the switch down to off, it'll shut the pump off, you can close your handle, purge your line, unhook, and you're ready to go. One of the additional features we look at that we can add onto our 4 Series sprayers is direct injection. Now direct injection can be added to our R4030, R4038, and R4045 sprayers. It is not compatible with the R4044 and R4060 machines. The direct injection system we use for our John Deere sprayers is a system made by Raven Industries. We do have the option of carrying up to 235 gallons of concentrated chemical, which is basically distributed between 4 tanks that are 50 gallons and then a 35-gallon tank as well. We have the option of putting on 3 separate direct inject pumps, and any combination of those. You can have 1 pump, 2 pump, or up to 3 in a high flow or a low flow variety. So our high flow pumps run about 5 to 200 ounces per minute. The low flow pumps run between 1 and 40 ounces a minute. Now again, that's ounces per minute, not ounces per acre. Essentially what that equates to, if you think about product, a high flow setup would be something more like Roundup or a Dicamba or a Liberty type of product, where you're applying 12 to 32 or 40 ounces an acre, no matter your boom width. The low flow pump would be things more like DRAs or drift reducing agents. You're going to be closer to that 2 or 3 ounces an acre. Where customers really find the advantage of having a direct inject system, Dicamba's been in the news a lot. We talk about it a lot on this webinar as well. But by having a product like that's a restricted use, for instance, we can keep it in a smaller 50-gallon tank, not contaminate our solution tank, and turn it on and off at will without having to do as extensive of a rinsing process. The other part that's nice about direct injection, if you are using it for drift reducing agents, you can turn the drift reducing agents on and off at will as well. So if you want to turn it on when you border a field, you can turn it off on the body of the field if the weather conditions allow. Save the additional money, but apply it where you need it. And it's a really great advantage of the direct injection system. Now these pumps are located on the back part of the machine behind the solution tank. Our R4044 and R4060 are not compatible with direct injection. Those essentially sit on chassis that are similar to other models, but they stretch the solution tank a little longer, take up the spot where direct injection would sit. These systems are also equipped with flush valves, so we can flush our pumps from inside of the cab, and that will pull water from our clean rinse tank through the pump, and we spray it out the boom or catch it if we want to as well. And another kind of last nice feature, when loading direct injection, those valves by default, we typically mount them in the back. Some people will mount them off to the side. It's really operator preference, but they use a flush fill valve from Banjo. So it's a no drip valve. You essentially take the end off of your bulk tote of chemical, put on this flush face, and it clicks in. You load up as much product as you want. When you unhook, you just pull down on a collar and it will disconnect without dripping any product on the ground. So a really nice option there. The direct injection systems are really pretty bulletproof. I've had a lot of good luck with them, and operators see a lot of increased efficiency. Think about the fact you can carry 235 more gallons of water or product, but also you can load up your chemical for the day, then just keep filling water and maybe a couple things you're mixing in the tank, and then inject your corn killer, your dicambas, your liberties as you need as well. When we look at the back of the machine, one nice feature that changed when John Deere updated their 4 Series machines is we've located all of the boom strainers in one location. So we've got the left, right, and center boom strainers all in one location. It allows for basically easy clean out of any of our boom strainers if we have any contaminants. One thing to note, there was a running change in the Deere machines for that center strainer. Older models did shrink that down to a 1-inch line. The newer ones are 1.5 inches. That was a change that was made in 2017. So something just to be aware of. Won't affect you if you're not putting down any 32 or 28% liquid nitrogen, but if you're getting into that 40, 50 gallons an acre range, that smaller line for that back center section might apply a lower rate. So just something to keep an eye out. Another thing to mention, on the kind of the top center of the screen there's a pressure sensor. This is where our boom pressure sensor is located. Whether you're operating ExactApply or not, boom pressure sensor is located here. When you're cleaning out the sprayer, as you're doing flushes, if you don't regularly do a clean water flush, this is a good place to look because there are just a couple real small dead spots in here. Or if you're seeing pressure not get to where you think it should be. It's a quick and easily accessible place to clean up any additional residue. When we look at the side of our Hagie machines, we have the option for a couple different fill options. We've got front fill, rear fill, and a side fill option. When a machine has a side fill option, it includes a eductor. What differentiates this Hagie machine from most other machines in the market is there's actually a Hypro pump on the side here. So if we load with the machine, not with the nurse tank, this Hypro pump will actually operate and load our product in. This is really nice because it avoids contamination of your main solution pump. Then it does also allow us to load around 300 gallons a minute as well. So a really robust and heavy duty pump there that's included with the side fill eductor option on our Hagie machines. A new option for us in 2020 on our Hagie machines is a row sense guidance option. The machine shown here has a row feeler. We're looking at the left front tire. There's a row feeler on the left side and the right side, allows us to utilize standing crop to help guide the machines. Much like if you run any combines, the row sense option we've had since 2008, we're basically bringing this to the Hagie lineup. We've got similar option on our John Deere sprayers, but new for 2020, this is an option available for our machines. Now it has to have John Deere steering solution, which we can retrofit back to 2014 STS Hagies or 2016 DTS Hagie machines. Again, provided they have the John Deere steering solution in them, we can add the row sense option as well. It's a 2-part system. We can run just row feelers for high crop applications. There is also a camera option for our vision row sense that we can also add and operate on our Hagie machines. Again, new for 2020. When we look at fill options on our Hagie machines, this is a rear fill option that we're looking at. The rear fill option is positioned right by the rear ladder where we access the operator's platform and get up into the cab, which is the gray portion kind of to the right there. The rear fill option locates our solution line and our clean water rinse line right to the back of the machine. The one on the left is our 3-inch fill line that goes directly to our solution tank. The one on the right is a 1-inch line that goes to our rinse water tank. Now, why would a customer want to select a rear fill option? It all depends on how you load. If you're spraying any specifically pesticides or things that you really don't want to walk through again, a lot of people will actually make a pass in the field, turn around and back up to the ditch or to the field approach or wherever they're loading the machine. So they hop down the ladder and their fill is right by the ladder instead of having to walk around to the front or to the side of the machine. So this is the rear fill option, one of 3 fill options available on our Hagie STS machines. One thing we notice being operators inside the cabs of our machine, as conditions change throughout the day, oftentimes it's hard to pick up on, especially if we're trying to gauge wind speed and wind direction off of how the crop is moving or off of fence lines and things. It gets a little challenging really to know when we should or shouldn't spray and or if we have to get out and use our anemometer and actually try and catch the wind speed that way. One nice solution that John Deere has is called John Deere Mobile Weather. This mobile weather station, this one's mounted on a Hagie. It is available as a factory installed option on brand new John Deere sprayers as well. And you'll notice the way this bracketry is all designed, this sensor can actually be lowered, so going into machine sheds or things like that, don't have to worry about knocking it off or things like that. What this sensor does is it'll provide a output or a display inside the cab. It integrates into our John Deere displays, whether it's a 2630, or John Deere 4600 or 4640 monitor, depending on the machine you're running, integrates the readouts, the information that this mobile weather sensor is gathering. Things like our temperature, our humidity, wind speed, wind direction. Basically combines a lot of that information into a value we call delta T, which is a combination of those values to really give us a threshold when we should or should not be spraying. And when we talk about things that can undergo the inversion process, we have to look at things more than just our wind speed and wind direction. The humidity and temperature play a big part of that. And the delta T value that this produces also gives us a nice threshold off of a singular number that really tells us the information we need to know. The other part that's really nice is we can get instant and average wind speeds. So am I just seeing a gust of wind? Is the sustained wind now getting up in that 15, maybe 20 mile an hour range where I should think about shutting it down? Or depending on, again, what you're spraying, am I starting to get off label and I need to shut the machine down, wait for another day, or wait for it to pass? This mobile weather station allows us to get that information in real time in the cab. The other added benefit is it documents that information on our monitor. So if I want to go back, look at maps of that documented information, or a nice feature inside our My Operations app on our phone, there's a weather details option that shows, just came out a few months ago, that you can actually look at wind conditions on the app based on a documented field as well. So John Deere Mobile Weather, it's undergone a little bit of a revision on the new sprayers. So if you're running a Gen 4 4600 and a 4 Series sprayer, there is a slightly updated version of the mobile weather. The sensor is the same, it's really just how it's displaying the information. If we look at the side of the RG1100 AGCO Rogator, one thing I want to call out is the remote load feature that's available on Rogators and has been available for quite some time. The buttons in the upper left, the white on-off, and then basically the rabbit and the turtle, the engine speed up or slow down, that's basically the controls you have from the ground on a Rogator. The reason I want to call that out is the comparison between the John Deere being able to turn the master on and off, rinse the tank, and do a lot of other functions that having the remote load capabilities here is nice, but John Deere does have a really elegant solution that's available on our machines with Auto Solution Command. If we look at the case machine on the 4440, here's our front fill option. That's a 3-inch line. Again, very similar to what the Deere has. One difference here is the lack of an air purge option available on this particular machine. If we look out in the boom of this Case 4440, one thing that's very prevalent out in the market on a lot of these machines is AIM Command or AIM Command Flex in this case. This is a system, it's actually manufactured by Raven, would be very similar, a few different changes, but very similar to their Hawkeye system. Now we'll talk in some comparisons between John Deere's pulsing solution, specifically in comparison with the Raven or with the AIM Command Flex in this case. One big thing to call out is we're pulsing one nozzle individually on this machine. That one nozzle pulses up to 10 hertz, or up to 10 times per second. When we look at the ExactApply system, we're able to pulse up to 30 times a second, depending on how we have it set up, which is one big advantage when we talk about higher application speeds or higher application rates and speeds. You can get a checkerboard pattern out of your applications when we look at on this AIM Command Flex system at higher operating speeds. The other thing to keep in mind here, being able to control a single nozzle versus a dual nozzle setup on the Deere side, we do have the option to switch between nozzles automatically or manually from the cab without having to actually get out and rotate our turret. If you look at this particular setup, if we wanted to change nozzles, we have to come out, take this nozzle off, and put a new nozzle back on. Now Raven does have 3-way options available. This particular setup on the AIM Command Flex does not have them, and it is a little bit mixed which ones do and don't. So being able to store 6 nozzles on the Deere turrets, along with being able to switch between one or another from inside the cab, is a really, really good advantage. When we look at the side of the case machine, a little bit of complexity here. If you take a second and kind of digest the charts and things, it does make sense. It is a system that does work very well. But again, want to draw some comparisons to John Deere's Auto Solution Command system. Here we're operating manual valves. We do have switches for lights to turn our pump on and off and increase and decrease our engine speed. But if I want to go rinse just my booms, rinse the solution tank, pull water from the rinse water tank into the solution tank, it gets a little complicated on which steps you can do and when and what position each of the valves have to be in. The Auto Solution Command really makes a nice simple solution, takes a lot of these valves, automates the process so that we're not having to read over charts or read the operator's manual to understand positioning of the valves to accomplish what we're trying to do, whether we're cleaning, spraying, or just generally operating the machine.
We watched that there, we walked around those machines. Some of the things I just want to point out is I like to think as I'm an operator and I'm out there and I got to fill that machine. That's one of the tasks I'm going to do multiple times a day. And what's the ease of actually loading product into that machine? Because at the end of the day, it's about getting product in the machine and getting it on the right place. That's the whole purpose of a sprayer. So as I walk up to the John Deere and I saw the Automated Solution Command System, very intuitive touch screen, easy to use, not a lot of levers or mechanical things we have to move around to be able to load solution into that machine. And even if we don't have the Automated Solution Command System on the John Deere sprayer, and we're using the manual system, we didn't have a picture of it in there, but the valves are laid out really nice on the side. There's shadows to kind of, behind it, shadow stickers to kind of tell you where to put the valves. There's pictures along with writing telling you, if you push on load or if you're pulling on loading, how to run it. There's still a command or a command board there, or a touchpad to be able to run the machine, to turn your sprayer pump on. That target fill, if I need to fill, 600 gallons to finish out a field maybe, that could be really handy as an operator from the ground to be able to do those type of things. So, when I looked at the competitive machines out there, that case especially came to mind. They have a flow chart on there of how to set those valves. And, to me, that was just another layer of complexity of how do I need to be there to load that machine. And, and the RoGator had, multiple buttons in different locations. It wasn't centralized, like the John Deere system is. So just adding a little bit of complexity and maybe not as intuitive to reach some of those things as it was on the John Deere.
Well, if it's the first time that you've walked up to a machine to run it, if you're switching operators or filling in for somebody who's not there, and you talk about being confused on what needs to be thrown, that's huge. But being able to type in exactly how many gallons you want in a sprayer, to finish out a field with all the sensors that they have in the tank now, that's
Game changer.
Sure, yeah, we could use the game changer term today. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said there too, Matt. It's the ability to be able to run a lot of the sprayer functions from the ground, not having to hop up in and out of the cab multiple times. If you think about running rinse cycles, if you run say a restricted use pesticide, a triple rinse is really the best flush that we can offer, what's really recommended. Every time you recycle that rinse, you got to hop back up into the cab. If you've got the automated solution system, that really allows you to do it from the ground. Or if you've got any plug strainers or plug boom strainers or nozzles or anything like that, being able to hit them from the ground is really, really impactful. Also, when we start talking about ExactApply, we didn't show a great picture of it on the boom necessarily, but the boom protects those ExactApply nozzle bodies really well. And also when we talk about ExactApply, we've got a feature that allows you to control those nozzles with a remote control. So same thing like the Auto Solution Command keypad. We can take the remote control on our ExactApply, walk behind the boom, turn on an individual nozzle or a whole section, and basically walk down the boom and check them as we go.
The thing that if you don't have that you end up doing is turning the whole boom on, and then you're running down the ladder having to go check the boom, or if you can flip the switches off, but if it's not in that section, then you're running back and forth, and you don't realize it, but there's a lot of gallons that get applied, and then you're trying to walk around that when you're out by the boom, and it just really starts to become a rat race when you're trying to diagnose a nozzle issue. So. We also discussed mobile weather, and that product really eliminates the subjectivity of spray records and gives you real-time information to make changes to settings at the boom level in the field. So, if the wind starts to pick up a little bit, you want to lower your BoomTrack Pro settings down a little bit so you get a little closer to the ground, or maybe you want to change your target pressure when you're applying with that ExactApply system. We can now change those things as you move throughout the field, or if you just need to be mindful of the conditions for the product that you're spraying is a big thing too. So the fact that John Deere has updated the controller there, the user interface is 20 times better in my opinion, and you can then view all that information in the Ops Center, but also on a mobile app. So we can see what the local airport information has, but also what's coming from the machine. And some of our customers, the airport's in a different location, it's up on a hill or a bench and they're farming in the valley, or, it's protected by trees. Those conditions are completely different, right? And so when it comes down to it, you say, I was applying and the conditions were just fine for the product I was applying. This really helps support that.
Absolutely. You can share the maps directly from the app as well. It's just the user interface, having that data right at your fingertips is super powerful.
Yeah, going back to filling the machine just here a little bit, guys, let's talk about the locations to fill. You take a look on the John Deere, we have that front fill option there, be able to start the pump from that front fill option or push on from that front fill option with the air purge.
Yeah.
Be able to make sure you get that chemical pushed all the way into the tank. That's really, really handy and really a nice way to help isolate maybe some cross-contamination issues between different loads.
Right.
And then you also still have your mid-fill on the John Deere, which is pretty standard on most sprayers. Then you get to the Hagie, and you really got three options. They have a front fill that kind of tucks up underneath the cab there. You can pull out and load from the front. They got the mid-fill, and then that rear fill right by the step. And you think about as we're spraying fungicide and pesticides this time of year, be able to back in a field driveway, come down that step and fill right there, not having to walk through that crop canopy and maybe into some areas you've already sprayed and having some of that residual chemical there. The safety of that that's pretty important. So I really like that Hagie on that rear fill.
Right. Yeah. And when you talk about the air part, some guys will shoot some air at their sprayer to clean out the hoses. And when you look at the John Deere sprayer, the position of that pump is in a spot where compared to older models, we shouldn't, or be less likely to actually airlock the pump when we're throwing some air at it, right, Nate? That's a change on the R series sprayers, I think, that you've mentioned before.
Yep.
That I wasn't aware of. So I think that's big, and the advantages of moving into something like that.
Absolutely. We can take and pull water from the rinse tank and move it into the solution tank, all from the cab as well. A lot of really nice features about this 4 Series that it brings a lot to the market, as well as the Hagie machines as well.
So I want to talk a little bit about saving money. And with C&B Operations, we're always interested in ways to save our customers money. And with John Deere ExactApply, our customers are seeing anywhere from 2 to 5% savings on their chemical inputs due to the individual nozzle control. But there are many other agronomic benefits that come from ExactApply.
Absolutely. We start to think about controlling our pressure. If we're exiting the headlands, we're increasing our speed. On a conventional sprayer, our pressure is going to vary as we increase and decrease our speed. So we either size our nozzles for kind of that happy medium of when I'm slower, bordering the field or leaving the headlands, or we size it larger for the body of the field. Well, your spray quality can really be affected when you're traveling at those slower speeds. When we start moving into ExactApply, having the infinite control of our pulsing ability right down to the nozzle not only allows for a faster turn on and off for our section control, a 15 or a 20-inch section width instead of 8, 9, 10, 12, even 20 feet on a section width, depending on the age of the sprayer. I mean, that's real savings without question. And then beside that, just the ability to be able to pair 2 nozzles together or both PWMs together on the ExactApply system. We can run at 30 hertz, 30 times a second that nozzle can kick on and off. Gives us an extremely wide range. We can use one nozzle for a lot of different applications as long as we size it correctly. So there's a lot of really cool things we can do with ExactApply. So I think the best thing to do now is let's go take a look at the spray table and look at some of those modes, and then we'll come back, we'll talk a little bit more about how to position the turret. This animation, we're looking at the individual nozzle control, so our section control system. Here we're approaching a waterway where we'll look at our nozzles shutting off individually. Now each one is in a section individually. You can see them shut off and turn back on. This section control ability, nozzle by nozzle, if I have a 120-foot, 15-inch sprayer, equals 96 sections on our boom. So really a nice system allowing us to minimize inputs and apply chemical and product where we want it to. In this video, first we look at our competitor system. This would be like an AIM Command Flex or a capstan system pulsing at 10 times per second. If we take a closer look, when we compare the two systems, you'll see the difference. Now Deere, in this case, we're pulsing at 30 times a second. You'll notice a much tighter pattern in between on and off times of the individual nozzle. So you look at the checkerboarding on the left versus the much tighter pattern of the 30 hertz pulsing of the Deere system on the right-hand side. We pulse at 30 hertz or 30 times per second. So when we look at our nozzles, it's really hard to tell which nozzles are on, which nozzles are off, and whatnot. So we're still getting a really full, solid pattern, but we are also able to control our pressure at a very, very fine level because we are actually pulsing at 30 times per second. If we look at the nozzles in slow motion, now you're able to see the on and off of each individual nozzle. Notice that the inside is on a different schedule, if you will, from the outside nozzles. So while the inside one is off, the outsides are on, and they flip and they keep going back and forth. Do also look at how crisp and clean our fan pattern is coming out of the nozzles, even though we're shutting that nozzle on and off as quickly as we are. So having the ability to compensate flow on the inside to the outside of the boom. As we approach a turn, the outside is going to start applying at a higher rate to compensate for the faster ground speed, whereas the inside is going to decrease its rate to minimize over application. You notice that with the nozzles, we have the same difference in flow rate. The left side is showing a higher flow rate, the middle's kind of halfway in between, and the right side has a decreased flow rate to compensate for that ground speed. In this example, we're looking at automatic nozzle switching, or auto select. What's nice about this feature is we have the ability to automatically select nozzles to keep and achieve the proper speed based on our application ground speed. So we see as we increase speed, we flip from the front nozzle to the back. As we increase our speed, our pressure is going to increase again, and then to maintain the proper pattern that we want, we're going to kick both nozzles on, which is going to allow for a higher flow rate while minimizing the pressure out of each individual nozzle, giving us ultimate flexibility to select the proper nozzle and the pressure that we desire.
Yeah, those are really good examples there, Nate, of the ExactApply operating modes. And one of the ones that I really liked was that first one we were going through the waterway and having that individual nozzle control. I grew up in rural northeast Iowa. We have smaller fields, a lot of waterways. It seemed like you'd spray the outside round of the field, outline the waterways, and you're half done with the darn field. It's just, so if we didn't outline those waterways, those 10, 12-foot sections, you'd come in and end up taking out the grasses in there to help protect that soil erosion. So being able to individually control those nozzles, that's a huge benefit in time savings, fuel savings, really going into saving costs there for an operation. Now, I do want to kind of emphasize, though, that to really get that good waterway control, we need to have an RTK map of that field, so your interior boundaries are mapped good. Need to be running a high level of accuracy on that receiver. Probably RTK is the best option there. You probably get by with SF3 if the mapping was done recently, but really want to push that higher level of receiver accuracy, much like you would with a corn planter going through those waterways.
Well, the reason is if you're on anything else, you're subject to drift, right? So your satellites are moving all the time. With RTK, you're referencing back to that fixed location. So that's the difference maker there.
Yeah, so the operational savings there in the time, the fuel, just the less logistics even having to deal with it, being able to go through those waterways. But once again, a little bit of setup time on the front side to get that done. Yep. Then the turn compensation, once again, growing up in the hills, we got contours, right? And we're never going on a straight row. So as I'm going around a sharp curve, the inside of that boom is almost standstill sometimes, on a 120-foot boom. You get the outside, if I'm going 10 miles an hour, that outside is probably going 15, even 20 miles an hour. So as we take a look and think about how much chemical am I applying to the inside with the standard nozzle versus on the outside of the boom, we can end up with gaps, in our coverage, or maybe we're not getting enough product on the outside of that boom, we're getting too much on the inside and end up with either damaging the crop or not getting enough onto the target species to kill the weed.
Especially with some of the products that are out there today, right? I mean, you over apply it, you're regulating growth potentially, or just the plant won't come through.
Right. Well, if you go back to the section control for just 1 second, if you think about your boom and you turn tight enough, all of a sudden that inside boom starts to go backwards.
Yes.
And having the individual nozzle shut off, you're not double applying at all. Turn compensation is still working, but also, you minimize the double application is huge.
Right.
You bet. And that 10 hertz versus 30 hertz, really comes into play. And, if you get that boom low to the ground and you're traveling at high speeds, especially maybe some pre-emerge work, if that's where we run into issues with maybe that 10 hertz. If we see that kind of, we call it checkerboards in the fields of maybe some weeds that got some escapes. Maybe we didn't get enough residual product down there to help control the weeds in those checkerboard areas, and you start to see that weed escape later on, where that 30 hertz is really going to help reduce that potential. So the other thing that we gain by being able to combine those two into one is high flow. So when you're looking at 2 solenoids on ours, and Nate's going to do a really good example here and walking through the nozzle body here next and take us through how to disassemble that and show you kind of the innards of it. But being able to combine 2 solenoids into one, we could flow 25% higher rates than our competition. So we can still get out there, pulse, at 30 hertz at a high rate, and get good coverage and high rates of application for early nitrogen application. So, and then this ExactApply nozzle technology, we're expanding this going forward. If you guys haven't seen our new ExactRate corn planter, the fertilizer system on there utilizes very much similar technology with the dual solenoids. To feed each row, curve compensation, once again individual row section control available with that machine. So As this technology continues to go forward, and the kind of the popular word in agriculture right now, I'm going to say that autonomy, right? We got to have technology like this in order to enable those next steps.
Right, and some of the things that we're doing already within C&B is we've partnered up with Aerial Precision Imagery, and they use manned aircraft to fly the fields and take pictures basically. And we're able to run that data through an algorithm that identifies where weeds are out in the field. And we're making map-based prescriptions to target those weeds. And ExactApply becomes a great technology now when we can apply to a zone area. So we continue to move forward with that project as well, and we're seeing a lot of great results. And it all comes back to return on investment, right? And just you take a look at chemical budgets today and the amount of money that gets spent there. This is the foundation for starting to save some money in that space.
Absolutely. 2 to 5% chemical savings is truthfully the very, very beginning. There's a lot of great things to come. So taking a little closer look at our ExactApply nozzle body, there's a couple different functions in terms of how we can set this up and operate it. And it all depends on the positioning of how we orient the nozzle. So we mentioned the position of the nozzle bodies. We can run off of 2 separate PWMs. And it's a little hard to see here on the screen, but in our traditional pulsing mode, we've got our A PWM and our B PWM. And if position 1, 2, or 3, these are numbered along the top side of the nozzle body. When 1, 2, or 3 is in the front or the leading position, our A PWM, or one side of this pulser, is going to be going to the front, and the B is going to be going to the back. And you can run both of them at the same time. You can run one individually. So you could actually have it set up. I'm from corn and soybean country. If you're using a different tip for your corn post and your bean post, you can switch between different nozzles in the cab manually at the push of a button. And this also allows us to run a lot of different ways. There's a bunch of other features that are available as well. The other part that's nice, and Matt mentioned it on the high flow option, if we turn this nozzle body around and look at our secondary option, our high flow option, we can run these as an A plus B. So both of these PWMs can actually direct flow out of one individual nozzle. And that's where our higher rate of pulsing comes in. Okay, so our 30 hertz pulsing, each of these PWMs runs at a max of 15 hertz, depending on if you're going around a curve or your speed and target pressure. When we go and put 4, 5, or 6 on the leading edge or the front of the nozzle body, we run both of these, again, out of that individual nozzle. Okay, so here we've got our A and our B directing out nozzle number 5 in the case of what's on the screen here. Okay, and so if we're putting down liquid fertilizer, or if we want to run one nozzle at a higher rate, that becomes really important in terms of how we have our nozzles oriented. One other feature we haven't talked about yet with ExactApply is the fact that we can spray conventionally. So if you want to run it like a conventional sprayer, there's a few different reasons to do this. We can take and turn the pulsing off, it'll lock the PWMs open, and it'll spray just like a conventional sprayer. Where this would be a feature you might use is with air-inducted nozzles. And if we take a look at herbicides and pesticides on the market, there's a lot of restricted use pesticides that are currently available. If we think about our dicambas or liberties that are restricted use and require the use of an air-inducted tip. Most of our air-inducted tips cannot be pulsed. And the reason for that, when the pulser turns off, the air induction component of that tip allows basically a free flow. The nozzle can drip when the pulser is actually in the off position. So it doesn't give us the best spray efficacy. Now, when we pair that with an ExactApply system, we can actually size our nozzles and use a feature we call Auto Select to use those air inducted tips in a conventional spray pattern, but allow the sprayer to manually, or I should say automatically, select the nozzle that's most appropriate for our ground speed and pressure settings. Okay, so our AB Auto Select, if I had, say, an 04 nozzle on the front and maybe an 06 or an 05 nozzle on the back, they're air inducted. When I first start a field, like we showed in the video, it might start on the front nozzle. Okay, and I'm operating at a lower speed. If I hit a threshold, say 40 pounds of pressure, I can't exceed that based on label or because the droplets are getting too small for for what I want. We can have that automatically switch to the back nozzle. So we go to a larger nozzle, lower the pressure again, allows us to increase our speed a little more. Now all of a sudden, say we bordered our field that way, now we're in the main part of our field if you've got nice straight runs. If I can start applying at 14, 15 miles an hour, and that back nozzle starts getting in that 40, 50 pounds range, we can all of a sudden kick on both nozzles at the same time. This is an industry exclusive feature, the Auto Select. allows us, again, that higher rate of flow, like Matt mentioned, 25% higher than our competitors. So the AB Auto Select is an extremely unique feature of the John Deere ExactApply system, and again, a really powerful one that's available as well. Also, when we look at the nozzle body, there's a few different things. If you currently have an ExactApply system, or if you're looking at it, it's really important to understand how the system works. And to take a little bit more deeper look into the system, let's take a look at pulling apart some of the components and looking at some of the internals so that you have a little better understanding of what's all involved. In this video, we're going to look at breaking down our ExactApply nozzle body, whether we need to service it or you have a nozzle dripping. This video will walk through breaking down the different components. First, we remove our retaining clip. After that, we're going to remove our coil pack. That's where the actual PWM magnetization happens. From there, we remove our valve stem. Notice the O-rings and the black cap. Now that cap, we want to make sure that we do not use any pliers on it. So we use a special tool here along with a special torque wrench provided by Deere. We loosen that cap. We can remove it. Inside of here then there's another O-ring and also the part that's actually doing the pulsing. This part is going back and forth. You'll notice the spring in there. We want to make sure that all the components in there are free of debris and also that the inside of the stem is as well. Keeping these free of debris makes that move freely and does not score the inside of it, which is essential to the movement that is required for ExactApply. To reassemble our ExactApply PWM system, we're first going to take our spring and our poppet. We're going to insert those back into the valve stem body. Those components need to go in first. Replace our black cap. Ensuring that we have the cap positioned, we're going to use our torque wrench and torque it to 1 click. We can then take our stem, reinsert it into the ExactApply nozzle body, replace our coil pack. When fully inserted, we're going to put back the retainer clip, and our reassembly of the ExactApply system is complete. Another alternative, if you don't have the special tool to hold the base of the stem, we can use the outside of the PWM as well. It is grooved so that we can put the stem inside, use our same torque tool, loosen the cap, and take our components apart just like we did utilizing the special tool. This is really nice, especially if you're working out on the boom, don't have all the pieces with you to work on it. There are pieces built into the nozzle body itself that we can utilize to loosen or tighten up the cap again. We're going to tighten it until our wrench clicks and reassemble our valve stem and our coil pack. The other part to look at on our ExactApply nozzle bodies is taking off the turret itself. There's a retaining clip which we can remove with our pick. Once we remove this clip, we'll be able to remove the turret itself. So we go ahead and pull on it. And you'll notice when we look at how the ExactApply system works, there's different portholes that correspond to each of the PWMs. Notice one side only has 1 opening, the other side has 2. That's going to correspond to the same pieces inside the turret. It's also good to double check the O-rings, the green parts, on the turret as well. Here as we look inside the turret, you'll notice the 1 position has 1 hole and the 6th position has 2 holes. That's going to correspond to the same features that are available inside the ExactApply nozzle body. 1 is going to be a short stem on the outside, 6 is a tall stem with 2 notches corresponding to the same features. That basically means that when position number 1 is in the front and 4 is in the back, we're sending flow to the number 1 position with the A PWM and flow to the number 4 position with the B PWM. When we rotate and have number 6 in the front, number 6 has 2 portholes, and that's going to provide flow from both the A and B PWM, providing us our 30 Hz pulse out of one individual nozzle. So as you can see, there's a lot of different components of the ExactApply system, but when you kind of break it down to its finer points, there's really not a lot involved as long as you understand what components there are. So if you've got a sprayer today, it's really important that we flush them at the end of every day, a clean water rinse. And then also there is a boom purge option as well. So we really recommend that you at least run some clean water through, especially when we're using like 32% or 28% any nitrogen product or dry solubles. It's really important just to make sure they get really well flushed. One of the questions that we do get a lot as well with ExactApply is, can I Y-drop with them? And the answer is absolutely. We take and turn the valve pulsing off, like we would with a conventional nozzle. Turn valve pulsing off, rotate the nozzles off that we're not using, set up our sections so that we shut them off inside the cab, and then we can Y-drop without any problems. Okay, so it's again just a good reminder, flush it with water at the end of every day so that we don't leave that poppet inside to get sticky or scored up or anything like that.
Yeah, a few moving parts in there, right? So it's always good to move that through there. And yeah, I really enjoyed the fact of just, how you can use the end of the solenoid there to, it's kind of like moving it just to kind of loosen it up. And what are the common things you see that may cause it, just besides product? Is there, is there any indicator to show maybe I should take it apart, or if I'm looking at the boom as, maybe after I turn it off or anything like that, or what would you recommend there, Nate? Yeah,
there's kind of two things. One is if you shut it off and you notice a nozzle that might be dripping a little bit. Sometimes what we can see, if you have a fine piece that made it past your boom filters or your screens, it could actually get caught in the cap. So on top of that poppet, on top of the spring piece, that could actually be holding that nozzle open just a little bit. It doesn't happen too often. Again, it depends on how clean your water is and the products that you're using. But if you do notice a nozzle dripping, you can just take the cap off real quick, just clean it off, put the cap back on, and off you go. The other thing we sometimes see is there is a diagnostic trouble code inside the cab. If you see a nozzle sticking, it'll say nozzle 73 A PWM sticking. Okay. And as we look at the nozzle body, if we're moving forward, the A is on the left and the B is on the right. Okay. And the A is always going to be directed towards the front nozzle, basically no matter what. The only time that the B is in the front is if 4, 5, or 6 on our position is in the leading position as well. Okay. So just an identification, if you will, when you get out there, if you see one dripping, what could be causing that.
Sure. Now you're holding a pretty hefty piece of technology there. It looks like it hangs down a little bit. As it sits in the boom assembly, on a John Deere sprayer, is it hanging, like, do I have to worry about rubbing it in the dirt or catching a fence wire on it or anything and ripping it off, or what's that look like once it's on a sprayer? Yeah,
that's a good point, Jeff. They hang down just I would say maybe 1/4 to 1/2 inch below the boom, pretty much across the entire width of the boom. It's a nice part about the John Deere design, especially, we covered it yesterday, the newer designed booms on the 4 Series sprayers, so your R4030s, your R4038s, they've been out since 2014. They protect the nozzle body very well. Now the nozzle does hang down just a little bit because we don't want our fan pattern to actually hit any of the boom, but the nozzle body itself is very well protected. The connections and things have been really well done. There have been a couple changes going into model year 20 that helps protect the electronics even more also. Sure.
So if customers have 30 series sprayers today and they like everything about ExactApply it can bring to their operation, can they put ExactApply on their 30 series sprayers?
I'd say talk to your salesman. There were so many significant changes between the 4 series and the 30 series sprayers that there's just too much technology to pack into a platform that is 8, 9, 10 years old at this point. So again, any 4 Series sprayer, we can retrofit or do a performance upgrade kit to put ExactApply on it. There's just a couple components we need to be aware of because we're running a lot of pulsing. We need to have a higher capacity alternator. But other than that, we're talking the boom nozzles and wiring.
So if I don't have an R-Series sprayers, are there some things today that I can do to improve my solution system as I look at going through the field?
Absolutely. First part is, depending on the age of your sprayer, your boom plumbing, is it poly or is it stainless? That's a really big one.
Why is it big?
Well, if you think about how poly works, it depends on, again, what you're spraying. But the earlier poly booms that we had, there were dead spaces at the end of each boom. So if you spray something like atrazine, it really packs into those ends, and when you do a boom flush, unless you actually take that end and flush water out the end and do a really, really thorough rinse, that product can stay in there. When we go switch over crops, Say I sprayed my corn, I'm switching over, I'm going to go spray beans. That atrazine can get into solution a little bit at the end of each one of those sections and cause burning. So there are some additional options we can have to change that over. So if you've got a stainless, or excuse me, a poly boom, and you want to switch to stainless, or if you've got dead spaces at the end of your boom sections, we can actually put what we call either a boom in a box, which flips it over to stainless. You can change it over to whatever tip spacing you want. So if you currently have 20 inch and you want to go to 15 for wide dropping or anything like that, it's a really easy changeover for that.
Well, plus it narrows up your spray pattern too, right? So you can get that boom a little closer to the ground and still maintain the overall pattern, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yep.
well, that's great. Well, so just 30 series sprayers, or can I go further back with the boom in the box?
Yep, you can go actually quite a ways back. We can go back to our 10 series sprayers. Okay, so a 4710, if you've got one of those machines, we can put the boom in a box option on, switch over the plumbing so it's stainless, which cleans out a little bit better. And we also can put what we call express end caps on the end of those boom sections, which minimizes our dead space at the end. So if we look at our graphic here on the screen, the sprayers I was kind of mentioning, Jeff, that have that dead space or that gap, the other thing that we tend to see is when we flush our booms or after winterization or switching products, we might get some trapped air inside of our solution line. And what happens when we get that air in the line is this nozzle will not be on and off snappy when we open and close that suction valve. Okay, that air bubble is just going to slosh back and forth on our boom and cause problems. We might lose spray pattern at some point and cause other issues. When we use an express end cap, it takes where this nozzle is actually pulling water out of or solution out of and moves it to the top of the boom. So when we first prime that boom, it's going to take all this trapped air and push it out of our nozzle body so we have a really crisp on and off, allows for a really quick and easy setup or changeover, if you will, if you're running a poly boom, or got a lot of sprayers out there that aren't very old too that came with a kind of a dead end system that we can get flipped over.
Right, then you don't have to worry about it circulating back into the tank if there was something in the boom to begin with, right? Some products on the market talk about recirculating stuff back to the tank. You know, you're flushing this clean out. Yep. It's a true positive, result at the end of the flush. You know it's gone. It's cleaned out.
Yep. One of the other products that we're really excited about that's new to the market here in 2020 is what we call an express flush valve. So these express end caps, if it came on, a lot of the earlier ones had a cap on the end with a pin that holds it in. Well, if you want to, again, do a really, really thorough rinse, I'm talking like end of year just to make sure every bit of residue is out of it, we had to pull the pin on the end of each section and flush them out. A really easy retrofit for that is this express flush end cap. Sits flush here, it's still pulling solution out of the top, so that trapped air is still going to get removed, and we're still going to maintain that really quick on-off snappy response. But when you go to do a flush or a clean out, at the end of each section you've got a small valve. You can turn the valve and flush water out the end. You can rinse out your boom for 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes with a really, really quick changeover. And this is just pull the pin, take the cap off, replace it with this, and put the pin back in.
Yeah, a lot easier to grab this handle versus trying to pull the pin or walk along with a screwdriver. Or if you drop the pin, you know, if you're on gravel, it becomes one of those OG moments, right? You know, to get that put back in. So that's real handy to have there.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of different options we can have and put on our machines to retrofit those that really can bring improvements to current machines without necessarily having to upgrade the whole entire unit.
Sure. Oh, that's great. So let's talk about the top 3 things that we really want all of you to take away from today's training opportunity that John Deere and Hagie bring to the marketplace for their solution system.
Yeah, mine, like we've been talking about, my number one thing is John Deere ExactApply. The ability to control our nozzles, save 2 to 5% chemical savings, the snappy on-off, the turn compensation. I could go on and on for a couple hours about all the benefits that John Deere ExactApply can bring to your operation.
Sure.
You know, the big benefits I saw today, or the ones I want to highlight, is the ability of that operator to load the machine, you know, from different points, where they're loading at, the ease of use with, you know, that auto solution command, you know, really highlighting how easy, you know, the tasks you do repetitively multiple times a day of getting in and out of that machine and loading it, you know, are really reduced and easy with the John Deere or Hagie sprayer and the way they're set up and where those fill locations are at. You know, that rear fill on that Hagie, you know, that's a really nice option, especially for late season application.
And we'll touch on more of technology in tomorrow's session starting at noon, but part of what we talked about here today was mobile weather and just being able to, real time moving through the field, not sitting stationary with the machine, but moving through the field, checking wind speed, temperature, humidity, wind direction, and those things, allowing you to make those adjustments to the machine as you move through the field. It's just another great thing that comes to the John Deere solution for our customers.
One thing we didn't mention too, just with the John Deere technology, if we've got mobile weather on our machine, if I've got an operator that's running my machine out in the field, I can dial in with remote display access and see what they're seeing on the cab too. So again, with those weather conditions being a little bit different, if the sprayer is 5, 10, heck, even a mile away, being able to see what's on the screen to basically get more than one person in on that decision. Should we shut the machine down or not? Just a little double check. And again, we'll talk about precision ag in more depth tomorrow, but that's another really big one. If I'm going to have my number, number 4.
Number 4. No, that's good. No, I appreciate that. So as we take a look overall here at the end, Nate states that he could go on for hours talking about this, and he brings a wealth of knowledge, and so does Matt, and I appreciate them being a part of the presentations that we've been putting on here. But that knowledge base doesn't stop with those two guys. We do a lot of work at the dealership training our employees, whether they're sales, parts, service, or precision ag. So we take this wealth of knowledge and help all of our people understand it, so they're there to support you, the customers. So it becomes, really C&B being the dealer of choice for our customers in that space. We truly understand the cost of downtime for our customers. And so having everybody have this knowledge in all of these areas, ExactApply, the solution system, and the technology really allow us to be focused on keeping our machines up and running out in the field. So as we take a look at uptime, one of the things I want to call your attention to is just some service specials we have going on for sprayers right now. Currently, we take a look at our annual inspections for sprayers, and I can't tell you how important this is. If you think about the time that you spend in your machines today, the bulk of the hours are now really being spent in a sprayer, where before, it may have been in a tractor or a combine. So we're spending a lot of passes through the field. So it's important to keep this machine up and running and having our technicians take a look at it. Today, our inspection is only $325 for this sprayer. If you do winterization as well, for only $75 more to winterize the machine. And you talk about the amount of antifreeze that you want to put into this machine gets to be a lot. So this excludes that. So there will be some things there that you want to talk to your service manager about when it comes to that winterization. So, but it's important to protect the investment, especially when you talk about ExactApply in those nozzle turrets and look at that. We also have no payment, no interest financing on that till January 1st of 2021. And so be sure to talk to us soon, because this offer is valid through October 15th. So it's important to get in and talk about that as well. So just wanted to bring that to your attention. It's a great opportunity. This is available to everyone. It's available on our website as well. So be sure to tune in tomorrow at noon Central to learn more about John Deere Precision Ag and Data Management for your operation. That'll be our third and final class in this 3-class series. On behalf of all of us at C&B Operations, and Nate Jansen and Matt Hatcher and myself, thank you for attending today, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow.